The 7 most dangerous gangsters in American history. 7 men, 7 empires built on blood, fear, and bullets. These weren't just criminals, they were architects of terror who held entire cities hostage, corrupted the system, and redefined what it meant to be untouchable in America. Tonight, we're ranking the most dangerous gangsters in American history, not by fame, not by money, but by one brutal metric: how terrifying they really were. From masterminds who killed with a signature, to monsters the FBI protected, to the man who became the face of American organized crime itself, this is the definitive list. The 7 deadliest gangsters America has ever known. Let's begin. Number 7, Frank Costello, the Prime Minister of the underworld. Frank Costello didn't need to pull the trigger. He was too smart for that. Born Francesco Castiglia in Italy in 1891, Costello arrived in New York as a child and quickly understood something most gangsters never did. Violence is loud. Power is silent. While other mobsters were gunning each other down in the streets, Costello was in backroom deals with judges, senators, and police chiefs. He didn't just run a criminal empire, he owned the system that was supposed to stop him. By the 1940s, Costello controlled illegal gambling, bootlegging, and slot machines across New York. But his real genius? He made crime legitimate. Politicians needed him. Cops worked for him. He was untouchable. Not because he was brutal, but because he made everyone complicit. He testified before Congress without fear. Why? Because half the people questioning him were on his payroll. In 1957, a rival sent a hitman to kill him. The assassin walked up, put a gun to Costello's head, and fired. The bullet grazed his skull. Costello survived and refused to identify the shooter. The code of silence was more powerful than revenge. Frank Costello died peacefully in 1973 in his bed at 82 years old. Almost no gangster on this list can say that. Why, he's number 7. He was dangerous, yes, but his weapon was influence, not terror. He killed quietly behind closed doors with a handshake and a bribe. Deadly? Absolutely. But compared to what's coming, he was a gentleman. Number 6, Meyer Lansky, the mob's accountant. If Frank Costello was the politician of the mob, Meyer Lansky was its CEO. Born Meyer Sucholiansky in Poland in 1902, Lansky came to America as a child and grew up on the brutal streets of New York's Lower East Side. But unlike other gangsters who relied on muscle, Lansky had something far more dangerous: a brain for numbers. He partnered with Charles "Lucky" Luciano in the 1920s and became the mob's chief financial architect. While others were fighting over street corners, Lansky was building an empire that stretched from New York to Havana to Las Vegas. He didn't rob banks, he built them. He created offshore accounts, laundered millions, and pioneered money laundering techniques still used by cartels today. The FBI estimated his criminal network was worth $300 million in 1970s money. Adjust for inflation? We're talking billions. Lansky was the mastermind behind Las Vegas. He saw a desert and envisioned a gold mine. He financed the Flamingo, turned the city into a mob playground, and made crime look like entertainment. In Cuba, he controlled casinos under Batista's regime. When Castro took over in 1959, Lansky lost everything overnight. But did he panic? No, he simply rebuilt. That's the kind of gangster he was. And here's the scariest part. He was never convicted of anything major. 50 years in organized crime, hundreds of murders ordered, billions laundered. The FBI called him the most dangerous man in America, but they couldn't touch him. Meyer Lansky died in 1983 in Miami from lung cancer. Not a bullet, not prison, natural causes. Why, he's number 6. Lansky killed with spreadsheets, not guns. He made crime a business, not a bloodbath. He was too smart to get caught and too careful to make mistakes. That kind of calculated danger? That's what separates amateurs from legends. There were five: Frank Lucas, American gangster. Frank Lucas didn't just sell drugs, he flooded America with them. Born in North Carolina in 1930, Lucas moved to Harlem and learned the game under Bumpy Johnson, the godfather of Harlem himself. But when Bumpy died in 1968, Lucas didn't just take over the neighborhood. He revolutionized the entire drug trade. Here's what made him a genius and a monster. Lucas cut out the middleman. While every other dealer was buying heroin from the Italian mafia, Lucas went straight to the source: Southeast Asia. He flew to Vietnam during the war, met with suppliers in the Golden Triangle, and smuggled pure heroin back to the U.S. in the coffins of dead American soldiers. Yes, you heard that right. Coffins of soldiers. He called his product Blue Magic, 98% pure heroin, better than anything on the streets. It was cheaper, stronger, and it hooked an entire generation. Overdoses skyrocketed, families were destroyed, entire neighborhoods collapsed. But Frank Lucas didn't hide. He flaunted it. He wore a $100,000 chinchilla coat to a Muhammad Ali fight. He sat courtside at Knicks games in a full-length fur while kids in Harlem were dying from his product. That arrogance is what got him caught. In 1975, the DEA raided his operation and found $584,000 in cash in a single Cayman Islands account. Lucas was sentenced to 70 years. But here's the twist. Lucas became an informant. He flipped on everyone: corrupt cops, mafia connections, rival dealers. Over 100 people went to prison because of his testimony. His sentence? Reduced to 15 years. He walked free in 1981. Frank Lucas died in 2019 at 88 years old in New Jersey. A free man. Why he's number 5? Lucas weaponized addiction. He destroyed lives not with bullets, but with a product people couldn't refuse. He built an empire on misery, betrayed everyone who trusted him, and got away with it. That kind of ruthless pragmatism? That's dangerous in ways most gangsters never achieve. Number 4, Bumpy Johnson, the godfather of Harlem. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a gangster. He was a legend, a protector, a philosopher, a killer. Born Ellsworth Raymond Johnson in South Carolina in 1905, he moved to Harlem as a teenager and quickly earned his nickname, Bumpy, from a massive bump on the back of his head. But that bump was the least intimidating thing about him. Bumpy rose to power during the Harlem Renaissance, a time when black culture was thriving, but so was poverty, racism, and crime. Harlem needed someone who could navigate both worlds. Bumpy became that man. He started working for Stephanie St. Clair, the queen of the Harlem numbers racket. When Dutch Schultz, a brutal white gangster, tried to take over, Bumpy became Harlem's enforcer. He didn't just fight back, he won. But here's what made Bumpy different. He understood power was built on respect, not just fear. He cut deals with the Italian mafia, Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, the Genovese family. He became the bridge between Black Harlem and the white mob. That took intelligence, charisma, and an iron will. And yet, Bumpy was also friends with Malcolm X. He funded community programs, protected local businesses, kept hard drugs, especially heroin, out of Harlem for years. But don't mistake kindness for weakness. Bumpy was arrested over 40 times. He served multiple prison sentences. And when someone crossed him, he didn't hesitate. Bodies disappeared. Rivals were beaten in broad daylight. The message was clear. Harlem belonged to Bumpy. On July 7, 1968, Bumpy Johnson collapsed and died of a heart attack in a Harlem restaurant while having breakfast. He was 62 years old. Some say it was natural causes. Others They think someone finally got to him. Why he's number 4? Bumpy was dangerous because he was unpredictable. He could charm you over dinner and order your execution before dessert. He ruled Harlem for 40 years, survived wars with the mafia, and died on his own terms. That combination of intellect, violence, and loyalty, that's the blueprint every gangster after him tried to copy. Number 3, John Gotti, the Teflon Don. John Gotti didn't just run the mafia, he made it glamorous. Born in the Bronx in 1940, Gotti grew up poor in a world where the only way out was crime. He joined the Gambino family young and quickly proved he was willing to do whatever it took to rise. In 1985, Gotti made the boldest move in mafia history. He orchestrated the assassination of Paul Castellano, the boss of the Gambino family, in broad daylight outside Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan. 4 gunmen, rush hour, dozens of witnesses. Castellano was shot 6 times, his bodyguard too. Gotti watched from across the street and smiled. That night, John Gotti became the boss of the most powerful crime family in America. But Gotti didn't hide like traditional dons. He loved the spotlight. $2,000 suits, slicked back hair, $1 million smile. He walked into courtrooms like a celebrity. The media called him the Dapper Don. The public loved him. And the FBI? They were furious. Gotti was acquitted 3 times. Witnesses disappeared. Juries were bribed or intimidated. Evidence vanished. Nothing stuck. That's how he earned his other nickname, the Teflon Don. But in 1991, everything changed. His underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano, flipped. Gravano confessed to 19 murders and testified that Gotti ordered most of them. In 1992, Gotti was convicted of 5 murders, racketeering, obstruction of justice, and more. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The Teflon finally cracked. Gotti died in prison in 2002 at 61 years old from throat cancer, alone, forgotten by the empire he built. Why he's number 3? Gotti was terrifying because he was shameless. He killed in public. He taunted law enforcement. He turned murder into theater. But his arrogance was also his downfall. He believed he was untouchable, and that's what made him dangerous, but also what destroyed him. Number 2, Whitey Bulger, the devil himself. If John Gotti was the celebrity gangster, Whitey Bulger was the nightmare. Born James Joseph Bulger Jr. in Boston in 1929, Whitey grew up in the projects of South Boston, a neighborhood he would eventually rule through sheer brutality. By the 1970s, Bulger was the leader of the Winter Hill Gang, controlling drugs, extortion, and arms trafficking across Boston. But what made Whitey truly dangerous wasn't his gang. It was his secret weapon, the FBI. FBI agent John Connolly grew up in the same neighborhood as Bulger. They knew each other, and Connolly made a deal. He would protect Bulger in exchange for information on the Italian mafia. But here's the truth. Bulger played him. He fed the FBI just enough intel to take down his rivals while committing 19 confirmed murders himself, maybe more. The FBI knew, and they let it happen. Bulger didn't just kill rivals. He killed anyone who got in his way. Women he dated, informants, business partners, even people who might talk. He strangled Deborah Davis, his girlfriend, because she knew too much. Her body was never found, and Bulger didn't kill cleanly. He tortured people, pulled out their teeth so bodies couldn't be identified, buried them in secret graves. Some victims were found decades later, others still missing. In 1995, Connolly, his FBI handler, tipped Bulger off about an impending indictment. Bulger vanished. For 16 years, he was one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives, second only to Osama bin Laden. In 2011, FBI agents found him hiding in Santa Monica, California, living under a fake name with his girlfriend. He was 81 years old. Inside his apartment, $822,000 in cash and a small arsenal of weapons. In 2013, Bulger was convicted of 11 murders, racketeering, and extortion. He was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 5 years. On October 30th, 2018, Whitey Bulger was transferred to a federal prison in West Virginia. Within 12 hours, he was beaten to death by inmates. His eyes were gouged out. His tongue was cut off. He was 89 years old. Even in prison, someone wanted him dead. Why he's number 2? Whitey. Bulger was a monster protected by the government. He didn't just evade justice, he was enabled by it. He killed for decades while the FBI looked the other way. That level of corruption, violence, and paranoia? That's not just dangerous. That's evil. Number 1, Al Capone, Scarface. There's a reason everyone knows this name. Alphonse Gabriel Capone, Scarface, is the face of American organized crime. Not because he was the richest, not because he was the smartest, but because he was the most terrifying. Born in Brooklyn in 1899 to Italian immigrants, Capone joined the 5 Points Gang as a teenager. By 20, he had the scars that gave him his nickname, 3 slashes across his face from a bar fight. In 1920, Prohibition became law. Alcohol was illegal, and Al Capone saw an opportunity. He moved to Chicago, working under Johnny Torrio, and quickly took over the city's bootlegging operations. When Torrio retired after an assassination attempt, Capone became the boss. He was 26 years old. Capone didn't just break the law, he owned Chicago. He controlled speakeasies, brothels, gambling houses, and breweries. His operation brought in an estimated $100 million a year in 1920s money. That's over $1.5 billion today. But money wasn't enough. Capone wanted power, and he got it through fear. On February 14, 1929, Capone orchestrated the most infamous gangland murder in American history, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. 7 members of a rival gang were lined up against a wall in a Chicago garage and executed, machine-gunned in broad daylight. The killers were dressed as cops. The message was clear: cross Capone, and you die. Capone didn't just bribe cops, he owned them. He had judges, politicians, and police chiefs on his payroll. Chicago's mayor, Big Bill Thompson, worked for him, and yet Capone played the public like a violin. During the Great Depression, he opened soup kitchens, gave to charity, showed up at public events. People loved him. But behind the smile? Over 300 murders were attributed to his orders. Some say the real number is closer to 1,000. The FBI couldn't stop him. Elliot Ness and his untouchables tried and failed. Capone was too smart, too connected, too powerful. So the government did the only thing they could. They got him on tax evasion. In 1931, Al Capone was convicted of federal income tax evasion. Not murder, not bootlegging, taxes. He was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. Capone was sent to Alcatraz, the most brutal prison in America. But by then, syphilis had ravaged his brain. He became paranoid, delusional, violent. He was released in 1939, mentally destroyed. He spent his final years in his Florida mansion, a shadow of the man who once ruled Chicago. On January 25, 1947, Al Capone died of cardiac arrest. He was 48 years old, but his legend, immortal. Why he's number 1? Al Capone wasn't just dangerous. He was a force of nature. He built an empire on violence and corruption. He controlled an entire city. He made murder into spectacle. He was feared by criminals and respected by civilians. And even after 90 years, when you say gangster, the world thinks of one face, Scarface. That's not just danger, that's legacy. So there you have it. The 7 most dangerous gangsters in American history, from Frank Costello's silent power, to Meyer Lansky's financial empire, to Frank Lucas flooding the streets with poison, to Bumpy Johnson ruling Harlem with respect and fear, to John Gotti turning murder into a media circus, to Whitey Bulger, the monster the FBI protected, to Al Capone, the man who became the definition of organized crime. But here's the question. Do you agree with this list? Who do you think should have been number 1? Was Capone really more dangerous than Bulger? Did we miss someone? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you made it this far, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started. Next time, the 7 most brutal mafia hits in history. Until then, stay dangerous.